on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
After several days of war, I just realized that I don't care anymore about those books. Some of them probably I will have to rewrite after war because the world has changed and I need to align my books and some stories in them to the changed situation.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show, a special edition of the show no less, with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
We don't normally record right up to the wire, but this is just a few hours before the deadline really for editing and getting this podcast out on time. And I hope you can tell I've tried to change my colours to blue and yellow, good lighting, sort of working like that. Because Mark, you can tell the story really, but we have a very special guest this week.
We do, yes. So I obviously we're all paying attention, doom scrolling or whatever to the situation in Ukraine over the last 3 weeks or so since the invasion started. And in one of my doom scrolls, I came across a slightly more uplifting is the wrong word, but an article on the BBC website featuring an interview with a writer called Anton Ein. I'm going to probably get his surname wrong, but Anton, science fiction writer in Kiev. And it was about parenting in wartime. Anton, I'm not going to scoop the interview that's coming up, but the gist of it is Anton was talking about what it's like to have a child and to explain to them what's happening. And he's writing in shelters and sitting on concrete floors with his laptop and trying to do some writing, obviously not being able to do very much at the moment because there's other things to worry about. So I had a look online. I found his website and I emailed him because, like all of us, I feel slightly helpless at the moment, and what we're seeing is horrible on all possible ways of describing it. And I just wanted to see if there's any way that we could help Anton in his situation, given that we have a lot of authors who listen to this podcast and are a part of the SPF community. And I have a lot of readers who, I think would be interested in helping out. And of course, all of the other authors in the SPF community, nearly 200,000 now, they all have readers as well. So it seemed to me like a way that we might be able to help. So I said to Anton, look, what could we do? How could we help? And he said the only thing really that would be helpful right now would be just to kind of spread the word a little bit about his science fiction collection. So we did that yesterday. I posted in the SPF community. I also emailed my list in my monthly newsletter. And Anton's collection started the day in the millions in terms of the ranking and finished, I think the highest I saw in the UK was 150. And in the US, I think it got to about 800. Which obviously was wonderful. So, I mean, without asking Anton, I suspect, given what I know about rankings and sales, that's probably meant he's sold about 1,000 books yesterday across all markets, which is wonderful. We've invited him into the community. He's now a member of the SPF community, and I thought it made lots of sense to get him on the podcast, which is why I said, would he be up for it? He said yes, and then the SPF podcast operation swung into movement, and James has interviewed him. We're going to edit it quickly. We've written an email that will go out on Friday, and we've got the artwork within like an hour. That's kind of that's the gist of it. But it's the kind of the short answer is it's our way to try and help in a very, very small way. One writer who's finding himself in a situation he probably couldn't have imagined a month ago.
Yeah, and when you watch the interview in just a few moments, listen to the interview in a few moments, you'll know right away that we have fallen on the right person, somebody who is there to help other people, he's doing what he can, he's staying in the country. His brother is still in Kyiv, he's got himself out to the west of Ukraine, to Lviv with his family, his wife and a 3-year-old child. But yes, if we can for now, it's not much, but for now we all buy his book. And there's a link. In fact, I've asked John to set up a link. So if you go to selfpublishingformula.com/Ukraine, that will forward you to his book in whatever your territory is. And you can buy that. But I think what we talked about in the interview is the next stage, because there's so much rebuilding to be done in Ukraine, even if the war suddenly ended today, which probably is certainly wishful thinking, but there's years of reparations and recovery for that country. And I think that's the stage at which Anton's idea of getting together with other writers who he can discover through our community in Ukraine, writing a non-fiction book about their experiences, what they learned through the war, how they changed. And that book itself, that will probably be the big one in the future for us to all rally around and get resources into the country. At the moment, they're in the middle of everything, Mark, and it's a lot of the conversation was about the logistics, about what's going on, the usefulness of resources, what we can do. We talked everything, actually. We talked about what he thinks about his comic turned President Zelensky, what he thinks about NATO's position, what he thinks about... We talked about the very topic he was interviewed about at the BBC, about what you say to a child. And we talked about his writing as well. Lovely bloke. Really pleased we've made contact with him. It's a really good interview and insight into everyday life. So this is, I'm going to throw you to this interview now. I recorded this a few minutes ago from Ukraine. It's probably going to be no more than about 48 hours old by the time you're watching or listening to this. So if we play the interview now, this is Anton Ein.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Anton Ein, thank you so much for joining us on the Self-Publishing Show. There's such a lot of concern and worry and heartache for what's happening in Ukraine around the world, and it feels like a privilege to speak to you today. Why don't we start off by just talking about you and your safety, where you are, and what's happening where you are?
Normally we are living in Kiev, but when the situation was getting worse and worse, my family has decided to flee to the west. Part of the family with kids, they have left Ukraine, and my wife and my son, actually my wife decided not to leave me here, and we found a safer place in Lviv, Western Ukraine, where our family is living. So I would say there is no safe place in Ukraine these days, because the missiles are reaching every city daily, and you never know when or where it can fly to. But Lviv is much safer than Kiev today, because Kiev is under attack from two directions. And my brother is left in Kiev. He decided to stay and to volunteer to help other people. So we are quite spread these days between the cities and the countries. But my wife and son with me in Lviv, and it's a relatively safe place, and we have pretty good conditions comparing to people who are in cities that are in siege, cities that do not have electricity and water or food. So I would say we are feeling fine, and we are not in need. We are able to help other people around, to support them with some money or some help sending something they may need around in the regions they do not have it. I think most of the people in Ukraine volunteer now to help others. And this is something incredible happening to people in this country. They got united. They never been such a strong, solid nation united before Putin's invasion. And he did exactly the opposite he wanted. So he created the nation and made them strong together, fighting for each other and helping each other. And this is fantastic. And this is very touching.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, but it's also a moment of desperation for the country, and the author community has come together as best as it can. And your book is the link to your book is going around the world at the moment. And I just had a quick look; it's at 240 something in the UK charts. It's in the top 1,000 in the United States, and I think you've said to us, you've been very honest and said that your family is in the West at the moment, although that's not guaranteed safety, but it's obviously at the moment okay, but you are in a position to start helping others with any resources that come your way, which is why we're doing this.
Yes, and I'm very grateful for this. Even without this, we do our best to help others. We have enough money to do it because now money means nothing. Many people today say that if you can spend your money to help others, this is the best way to spend your money. And we also do it. And this support, first of all, of course, it gives some extra resources, but it also gives some idea of what I should do after this war, because I feel that this warm welcome of the writing community in the world, it can be spread to other authors as well. And I want to find many authors here in Ukraine. I do not know them at the moment. I want to find many of them, and I think it's worth thinking about some collection of stories from Ukrainian authors, because there's a lot of talented people here, and spreading a word about them will be a very good thing to do after we win.
Yeah, and I know that Mark has been in touch with you and has offered his help, and the whole community, I think, is on standby to help, because of course there's, we pray that there will be some resolution soon, a ceasefire at some point, but in the months and years to come, there's so much repair work to do in Ukraine. There's so much rebuilding. People have lost their homes. You will go back to Kiev, and it won't look like it did when you left, and so I can imagine a book, you write a community coming together in Ukraine. You do the writing, we'll do the rest, and we'll do everything we can to funnel funds into the writing community and into Ukraine in the time ahead of us.
Thank you very much.
Let me just ask you a couple more questions about the situation. So your brother is in Kyiv, and I should say Kyiv. We used to pronounce it Kiev, but everyone now says Kyiv, which
it's okay. We call it Kyiv because of the Ukrainian pronunciation, okay. Kyiv. But in English, it sounds almost identical.
Well, the same. Okay, so in Kyiv, your brother is there. And of course, as a man of your age, and I would be the same, wouldn't be able to leave the country because they want the men to be available to volunteer. Is your brother volunteering on the kind of social side, or is he, you may not want to answer this, by the way, is he more active in the resistance?
No, he's in social volunteering. He's delivering some goods, some people, helping them, because at the moment situation in Kyiv was that we have army and we have what probably is to be translated in English as militia. It's the civil volunteers who support army as militaries. Now they become almost equal. So both of them did not need people who do not have a solid military experience or did not serve in the army. So there were much more volunteers to serve in army than army needed at a certain moment. Yesterday, they announced in news that there will be the second wave of mobilization when they would need even those who do not have military experience. It's a bit different in different regions, but because of the high population in Kyiv, even with including people who decided to flee, Kyiv did not recruit people without military experience so far.
It's unthinkable to me, sitting where I am in the UK, that I could be in a situation where in the next few weeks I would have to put on combat uniform and go out with a gun. But that is the situation that you and your brother are in. It's a possibility.
Yes.
How does that play out for you? How do you think about that? Is this something you'd ever envisage would happen?
No, but it changes mindset when this happens. When you hear all those explosions and sirens daily and nightly, it changes something inside. When you see this in news every day, every night, the terror happening all around, I think every man comes to this decision that he is ready for this. People do not want it, but many people go for it. They go volunteering. Maybe in the second wave, they will call to arms most of men. It would probably depend on Russia's behavior. If they now have very serious shortage of military equipment, tanks, machines, machinery, and I doubt they will go with just troops with the guns running like during the Second World War, but they can. In this case, they have so many people in Russia. I think in this case, we will have a global mobilization all around Ukraine. I hope it will not happen.
Yeah. We're hearing stories of the Russians running into trouble and convoys bogged down in mud and incredible, fierce fighting and resistance from Ukrainians. Are you seeing any evidence that there's a change of tone amongst the Russian recruits who've been sent into this situation, some of whom might be just like you, might just be writers who are suddenly finding themselves invading a country at someone else's orders?
It's hard to judge because Russia is cutting communication channels to prevent the proper information flow. So, but we see every day more and more Russian celebrities and some Russian authorities resigning or protesting. In my book about this war, I quote a lot of Russian rock singers who used to protest against the Russian invasion to Crimea and Donbass since 2014. Those guys I used to listen since I was a teenage, and the ones I still have a lot of respect towards, and they protest a lot. They are now forbidden in Russia. Their concerts are cancelled and forbidden because they support Ukraine. But we see day by day much more of them. But at the same time, we do not see a significant rise of Protestants among the civil people around Russia. They are scared, they are misled with this terrible propaganda, and I doubt they will all go to streets. When we had a revolution of dignity in 2013-14, and students were beaten by police, more than 1 million of people came to Kiev, to the center of Kiev, in several hours. From all around Kiev and suburbs and other cities, they were coming by buses, trains to protest, and millions of people supported this. And that's why our president at that time was traitor and Russian marionette. He escaped to Russia. But in Russia, this doesn't happen. I don't know why. Maybe because they live in this atmosphere of propaganda pressure. Maybe they did not get this Protestant spirit and the taste of freedom as we had during all the years of our independence. But I don't think that it will happen and they will start their own revolution. The more probable scenario is that oligarchs and the economical elite, together with the military top brass, will finally find a way to arrest or eliminate Putin and in his bunker, and they will make a coup and start some new course for Russia. Yeah. This scenario is very probable, but I think it's technically very complicated.
Yeah, I'm sure he's well surrounded. I mean, that's the ridiculous thing here, is that Russia is a huge country, rich in natural resources, and could play a full part as a superpower in the modern world, but it's being constantly dragged back to its old Soviet dictatorial roots, and it's such a shame. But it's, on the other hand, Ukraine has the same history. You know, it's behind the Iron Curtain, was part of the Soviet Union, and yet you are a country that's constantly looking towards the democracies and the institutions of sort of a more freedom and market economies. Why do you think that is? I mean, what is it about the Ukrainian people that's led them to look this way, and the Russian people, as you say, to either be passive or look east again, or, you know, internally?
You know, that's a very difficult question. It probably takes a lot of long historical considerations of both nations. Ukraine, even in the times of Tsar Russia, Ukraine used to be independent to a certain period, till the mid-19th century, if I'm not mistaken with the dates. And Russia was always empire, and they always had a Tsar. And I think it's a historical determination that they need Tsar and they need those imperial ambitions. Ukraine used to be in between, fighting sometimes with Russia, sometimes with Turkey, sometimes with Poland, during all those turbulent centuries. And it was always pretty independent. But at the same time, putting the wars apart, Ukraine was always very peaceful nation, because we are a very agricultural country, and our culture does not have military heritage or military pride. We were always proud about our peaceful development and some achievements. So probably this mindset, difference in the mindset, is something that has defined this gap, probably now a chasm between the nations.
Yeah. Well, one of the figures that everyone's looking towards is Volodymyr Zelensky, the unlikely man who's become your president. I mean, he's seen as somewhat as a hero around the world, and he's very photogenic, and he's put on his flak jacket, and he's led the sort of resistance and the charge. Is he looked at the same way in Ukraine?
I think so these days. I will be very open. I did not vote for him. I was very much against him because I never took him seriously, and it was. It's not just my dislike of him. It was a very serious and conscious decision to be against him, because he was not the right candidate for the presidency. He was a comic and not serious, not enough educated, and most of the educated people never wanted him to be the leader of our country. But it happened that after the war started, he has showed something he either did not have or did not show before. He stayed in Kiev, he stayed in Ukraine while having opportunity to escape, and he became the symbol of the resistance of the nation, showing that he does not give up, that Ukraine does not give up, and he appeared to be a right politician for this very moment and situation, and he got my respect. I don't know what happens further, what would be the next election, will I vote for him again or not, but he definitely deserved my respect with his action and with the image he is showing to the whole nation and the world community. And this is something I have to admit. It's not that my mistake, I did not vote for him, but it's something that I changed my mind about our president during last 3 weeks. And I see many friends of mine who also were very much against him as a president. now support him and show their respect in the social media, sharing it, and it's incredible. You know, something happening in 3 weeks that is changing the attitude of many people towards our country leader.
Yeah. There's an old Shakespearean quote, isn't there? Some men are born to greatness and some achieve greatness. And there's just had this moment where he's stepped up and the world is grateful. And I can imagine Vladimir Putin hates every aspect of him because he comes across in every way that Putin is not.
Yes.
Yeah, which is wonderful. Let's have a quick chat about your writing, Anton. So when did you start writing? And I know you've got this one or two books out so far, but I know you want to do a couple of novels. But when did you start writing, and what is it that you would like to write?
You know, I was from the childhood, I was writing some poems, but I do not take it seriously now. Then in the teenage period, I started writing some songs, but they also look quite ridiculous right now to me. And some trials to write something in prose also were not serious. And just less than 17 years ago, I started writing my first big novel. It was called I, Jesus, Rockstar. And it was the story of Christ's second coming to Earth nowadays. And I finished it last November and edited a bit during the recent couple months, December and January, preparing it for translation. I was about to send it to my translator in London in February, but life has changed. And during the time of working on it, I never had time to write because I was very busy with my marketing career, always in business trips, working for multinational companies in many regions. And I never had enough time to focus on my writing. I was writing in airplanes, airports, trains, taxis, sometimes in the office, at home, at night. But the novel was huge and very ambitious, and I needed to focus on it to keep the storytelling solid. So after I has quitted marketing, corporate marketing, I decided to focus on my novel. And during this period, it was in 2015. And during this period, I have written a lot of other stuff because when you are in the creative mood, your brain generates a lot more ideas and you want to park them. You start parking and you start writing and you cannot stop before you finish. So I have written a lot of short stories, some novella, and I have started 2 more series in different fantastic fiction genres. And now I have several works in progress. This novel is finished. It's book 1 of 2 about Jesus. And I have finished the novel about the science fantasy novel. It's absolutely different genre to anything I have ever read. It's a world where the magic and science are the same, and programmers, magicians, I call them code mages, they are writing the code for spells and install them in the artifacts to imbue them with the certain properties. It's a detective story about the old seasoned program mage who is investigating some cases, and he's assisted with his with first artificial spirit in the world. It's kind of our artificial intelligence in their magical world. And she is awesome, and she is the most intriguing character in this series. So I was about to start querying to literary agents right on the February 24th. And I had ordered the printed copies of Russian edition, and They were waiting for me in the post office on the February 24th. Probably they're still there or stuck somewhere in between, or maybe they are lost, which does not matter much. Because after several days of war, I just realized that I don't care anymore about those books. Some of them probably I will have to rewrite after war, because the world has changed and I need to align my books and some stories in them to the changed situation. Like in the novel about Jesus, he is not able to travel to Russia for certain reasons. I don't want to spoil it, but he's not able to go to Russia, but he is able to go to Ukraine to judge the Orthodox Church and their behavior in time of his absence between two of his comings. But now this would be impossible, and I need to align the story to the reality to actualize it. But I just realized that I don't care about those books right now, because I want to write some non-fiction book, documentary about people during the wartime in Ukraine.
Yeah. I mean, the idea you had of gathering writers' experiences during the war, I think would make a terrific book, and one that we could rally around again.
Yes, my working title is The Thin Yellow and Blue Line Between Love and Hate, because I don't want to focus on war action, on statistics, on fights. I want to focus on people and their feelings, emotions, their stories, how they were living during the siege, during how they were escaping, or they lost someone, or they were caring about their kids. I have found out during the interview with BBC, I have found out that this topic of kids and parenting during war is the most sensitive for the people worldwide. And it's also very sensitive for us, and we do our best to not only to make our kids stay in the physically safe surrounding, but also to care about their psychology, because they definitely will have some traumas and PTSD. The older they are, the more they understand, and the more trauma they get. My boy is just 3 years old, but he understands something, and from the very beginning, we decided to tell him truth. We are not lying to him that this is kind of game or quest, escaping from home. We're telling him the truth. It's war, which is a new notion for him, but we're also telling him about bad soldiers who attacked us, good soldiers who protect us, the ones with the Ukrainian flag. He's asking questions. We try to tell him the truth adopted to his age. It's a challenge, and many parents choose different approaches. Some people choose lies, and psychologists say this is a wrong way, because sooner or later it will have its consequences to the children's psychology, and it's better to tell the truth. And
children pick up the truth anyway, don't they? They hear, they see. Incredible conversations you're having to have with your children. So, Anton, what can people do to help? We're urging people to buy a copy of your book, and that's going very well. And we'll give the link out again in a second. Let's talk about the big thing, first of all, which is, I know on the ground, lots of people in Ukraine will be frustrated that NATO and the West are not physically there fighting the Russians. But is this something you understand, the position of the West and the risk of that? Or would you rather see the West and NATO in particular move in?
From one hand, I clearly understand why NATO is keeping away from it. We are very grateful for the support with all the financial, military support and supplies from all the countries around the world. But of course, we understand that NATO is not able to join this fight, because NATO is purely a protective alliance and protecting the members of NATO in case they are attacked. So NATO does not have a right to jump into this fight. But from the other hand, this situation is something which never had happened before since NATO was established. And it's not only a question of Ukrainian security, it's a question of security of the whole Europe and probably the world, because Putin is absolutely insane. His actions are irrational, and no one knows what he can do next, because he doesn't have a clear vision and strategy what he wants to achieve with this war. And he is just destroying Ukraine and killing people, destroying infrastructure, houses, hospitals, schools, nurseries, and the production factories. But there is no logic behind it. It looks like pure emotions and maybe some sick brain, as many experts state. The problem is that they are playing now with the nuclear grenade. You know the joke about the monkey with the grenade? They're playing with the nuclear grenade. And it's not only about his his claims about threatening the whole world with the red button of the nuclear missiles. It's a nuclear terrorism they do now in Ukraine. They have captured Chernobyl nuclear station, and they are trying to I don't know how to explain it. They're trying to destabilize it, and they're keeping the personnel of the nuclear station as hostages. They cut the power, and our energy specialists doing their best to renew the power supply, because they were working on the diesel generators and they had like 24 hours reserve of the fuel a couple days ago. But which is the thing which is even more dangerous, that they have already captured Zaporizhzhia nuclear station, which is the biggest nuclear station in Europe as far as I know. It's 10 times bigger than Chernobyl, and they were when they were attacking it, tanks were shooting directly into the energy block of the nuclear station, which is actually bulletproof. But they were shooting with the weapons that were able to break the external shell. And now, as they have captured it, they also keep all the personnel as hostages. They torture them, and they send their energy specialists to this nuclear station, and they try to destabilize it as well. And 2 days ago, they did a huge explosion of the ammunition next to the walls of this nuclear station. I cannot understand what they try to achieve with it, because this is a suicidal mission for them, and not only for people who execute this, but also for the half of Russia or maybe half of the world. Because if something happens to this nuclear station, there will be no safe place in 1,000 kilometers around, or maybe worldwide.
Yeah,
this can be the largest nuclear disaster in the world ever.
Terrifying.
And I think this is something that NATO, European Union, every country around should take care about, and closing the sky above Ukraine, maybe part of it, sending peacemakers to the nuclear objects in Ukraine can be a good solution, because this is not a matter of safety in Ukraine, but a huge threat for the whole world community.
Yeah, almost as if that there's a reason for the West to go in that's not them taking sides and fighting Russia. It's to go and protect an asset. Okay, it's a complicated situation, but that's really well explained. Thank you, Anton. And for those of us that feel a bit helpless around the world, is there something we should be doing to help you?
You mean to help Ukraine?
Yeah.
I think all the current sanctions and the military supplies are providing great help and giving us an opportunity to destroy big columns of Russian tanks and aviation. More anti-air systems would be great because they are attacking us with the missiles massively and with the aviation. And yesterday, United States announced that they would provide serious anti-air military support.
And on an individual level, Anton, I mean, we can donate to I think there's some in the UK. They've set up the DEC, which is like a charity you can donate to that's organising relief to Ukraine. Is that something that we can do, or should we be collecting toothbrushes and stuff and sending it over?
It's hard to say. I'm afraid I'm not quite informed. What are the current needs? I know that in many regions there is a lot of humanitarian supplies and a lot of funds that are providing some financing to people. But as I told before, money means almost nothing now because you can hardly buy something in many regions.
Yeah.
I think the best thing for today is helping Ukrainian refugees in many countries because the neighboring countries are already unable to accept them. Poland, Czech, Slovakia, and the infrastructure is not able to deal with such a huge amount. Today, I have read that 3 million people already crossed the border of Ukraine. 3 million people, it's more than the population of some small countries.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a huge load on the infrastructure of neighboring countries. And I think many other countries can extend this help and accept refugees for the times of war and maybe some beginning of renovation of Ukraine, because only in Kharkiv, 600 houses were destroyed during these 3 weeks. 600 houses. It's like a small town in many countries. And all around Ukraine, I think it's thousands. Also, some humanitarian help and financing some funds that are providing their help is great because a lot of volunteers gather to do it on their own, and they may need some extra donations. But I think it should be made centralized, not chaotic way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now provide informational support of what people can do, how they can help others. I can contact my friends in informational resistance, asking them if there is a centralized database of organizations and communities that help and who may need those donations. I think that can be also very good support.
And we'll do our research as well and put some links below. Look, Anton, it's been brilliant speaking to you. Our hearts go out to you and your family, particularly your brother in Kyiv still, and just thinking about Kharkiv and Mariupol, isn't it, in the south, which has been absolutely battered with horrific things going on. You know that you have our support and our prayers. We hope there was something vaguely optimistic from Zelensky this morning about the peace talks, and that's all we can hope for, is that Putin realizes he needs a way out and something will happen soon. But in the meantime, we're here for you, okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I really appreciate all this support I got during these days, and it's fantastic and very touching. Thank you.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
I did forget to ask him how to pronounce his surname, Ein, but it's probably is something else, but German for small, is that? I don't know. And that's Kleiner, isn't it? Ein's A. Anyway,
that's me. I'm terrible with names.
Yeah. But there you go. Now, Mark, you're at a disadvantage. You haven't had a chance to see the interview yet. But it's what normally, even as a journalist, normally I speak to people and interview people after an event. But at the moment, who knows what's going to happen in the next few weeks. So the west of the country, if you look at Ukraine, I think most people are aware of this, as a kind of line down the middle, and the west of the country has been more or less left alone by Russia as it stands at the moment. Particular cities like Mariupol in the south are being battered because Russia was already in the Crimean area, and they're coming in from the north as well. So Kharkiv is another city that's under siege, and of course Kiev is the big jewel for the big prize that Russia wants if it continues. But nowhere's safe. And being with your family, your 3-year-old son, even in Lviv, is terrifying at the moment, what they're living under. It's like speaking to a historical figure from a war gone past. Air raids, threat of soldiers, the possibility in the next few weeks of him putting on, combat jackets and being handed a gun. Yeah. We talked about all of that. So incredible.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, and everyone, Lucy and I have been kind of we're no different from anybody else. We've been shocked, and I found it very unsettling over the last month or so. And again, that's not special. Everyone's feeling that way, but the government in the UK is very slowly, but we got there in the end. We kind of opened up now so that it's easier for refugees to come in, and Lucy and I have agreed that we have a space actually beneath where I'm recording this, a bedroom that you might be staying on Friday, James.
Yes.
Actually, that we're prepared to take on a refugee and a family to get them here if that's necessary. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to kind of speak in too hopeful a way, but what I'm reading this morning is that both sides seem to be getting a little bit closer to somewhere that they might be able to settle on. So, maybe let's be really hopeful. In a week or two, maybe this horrible thing will all be over. But in the event that it isn't, we'd like to take one or maybe even 2 families to give them somewhere safe, because at the end of the day, I've got 2 little ones. I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And they're both asking questions about it. I mean, Samuel's 8 and he's asking about, he's not a fan of Putin now, as I suspect no one outside of Russia is. And Freya is 10 and she's kind of, asking questions. Very excited about the prospect of having another child in the house that she might be able to help. So, it's everyone comes together, and this, we're privileged. Well, we're privileged in tons of different ways, but we're very privileged in the sense that we have a big community of writers, and I knew that the response would be generous and open-hearted, and that's absolutely proven to be true. You just kind of see those books, or see Anton's book shoot up the charts yesterday from nowhere to being number 1 in lots of different categories. That's just a testament to how kind this community is, and it's not going to be a ton of money for him, but it's not the point. I think it's so lovely that we can all, in a really small way perhaps, but it all just shows him and those he's with that they're not forgotten, and we're all thinking of them.
Yes, absolutely. And if you haven't got yourself a copy yet or put it onto your newsletter, we have set up that link, selfpublishingformula.com/Ukraine. And there's a universal book link on there, or a Genius link on there. So that will send people to their various territories, or set up your own link to that page. It's interesting because when I talked to him about what we can do towards the end of the interview, we did talk about anti-tank weapons and stuff. Obviously, I can't deliver those, but he said there are, you can imagine suddenly every citizen in Ukraine is very well aware of the precise nature of weapons and military hardware material that's going into the country from the West is incredibly valuable to them, and they're very grateful. But what can we do? One of the things he said is there's 3 million people, their families who've left the country will need somewhere to stay. So that is definitely something that we can do in the West, and we're seeing what we can do as well. Probably not in our house here, unfortunately. But I do have access to a house with rooms in it of a close relative, and we are having discussions there. So we'll see what we can do. Good. Okay. Well, a special edition, rushed out. I want to say a huge thank you to the team. I've got one little admin note, which is if you're interested in the podcast, this is unrelated to Ukraine, but if you're interested in the podcast production process, and I do get emailed fairly regularly by people asking what equipment we use and so on. I am actually on a podcast about making podcasts on March the 23rd. Chris Cookley has interviewed me. It's whomakesapodcast.com. You can go and listen to that interview. And Chris, I think, is a good person to follow if you are interested in getting into podcasting. Right, we'll speak to Anton again. I've absolutely no doubt about that. And I didn't say anything on the interview because it's just too far in the future. But if he's listening, if we can get you to London in June, Anton, you will be our special guest. So
yeah, I was thinking that myself. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We'll see what we can do. All right. Thank you very much indeed, team in the background, for working so hard and diligently. And thank you to our special guest today, Anton Ein, out there in Lviv in Ukraine. That's it. I'm not going to do the usual handoff. It's too jocular. Let's just say goodbye.
We'll say goodbye. We'll say, good luck to Anton. I hope you stay safe. And if Anton needs any if there's anything we can do, and also I don't know, there's a very good chance we have other Ukrainian writers listen to this podcast, and I'd extend the same offer to them as well. So you can get us at support@selfpublishingformula.com or just find us on Facebook.
That's it. Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.